So, prominent industry insider slash leaker Nate the Hate just recently teased that we would be getting a Nintendo Direct either on the 11th or 12th of this month. And yeah, Nate the Hate, he's somebody with a pretty impressive track record. He seems to be one of the more reputable uh, sources of information out there. And his claims, I believe, have been corroborated by a number of other people. So yeah, and also everybody's just kind of been expecting that we're probably going to get a September Nintendo Direct, considering we didn't have one in June. So yeah, I figured we would just do this little podcast here where I go through and I talk about the potential announcements that we might see added. I've got this whole big fat freaking list of stuff here in front of me, and we're going to go over it. And yeah, so with all that said, let's just get right into it, and be sure to let me know in the comments what you hope gets announced. Um, I kind of want to start off by talking about some Nintendo Switch 1 games because I feel like I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. This is the first Nintendo Direct since the Switch 2 has come out. Obviously, we had the big Nintendo Switch 2 blowout presentation direct back in April, where they showed us our first look at Donkey Kong Bonanza and went into a deep dive about Mario Kart World and also announced Kirby Air Riders and all that other stuff, GameCube and SO. But just literally like, I don't know, a day or two before that presentation, they had a Nintendo Switch 1 Direct, which was really cool and also kind of unprecedented. I don't think they're going to continue to do that. I don't think they're going to keep doing like separate Switch 1 and Switch 2 Nintendo Directs. I think they're just going to have it all in there together. But I think whether it's all just kind of random or if they want to structure it like how they did back in 2017, 2018 when the original Nintendo Switch first came out. Because I remember there was definitely, I want to say like the March 2018 Nintendo Direct, for example. That was where they announced, they gave a little teaser at the end for Smash Brothers Ultimate, and they showed us the Splatoon 2 expansion, the Octo expansion. It was a really good Nintendo Direct, but the first portion of that was about 3DS games. So in that same presentation, at the start of it, that's when they announced WarioWare Gold and that Luigi's Mansion, the first one, would be getting a 3DS port, as well as I think there was a new Dylan's Rolling Western game for 3DS. So I feel like they might take that same strategy here, where they open the presentation, kind of giving us some Switch 1 games, because obviously the Switch 1 has a massive install base, over 150 million units sold, on track to becoming the best-selling gaming console of all time. So with that said, because obviously not everybody's going to, adopt to a Switch 2 in the first year. So Nintendo wants to reassure those players that they still have something to play on their console that continues to be a massive success. So yeah, I think that might be the strategy. That's what I would probably do if I were Nintendo. I would start the presentation by showing a bunch of games coming to the Switch 1, and then transition, after maybe like 10, 15 minutes of that, transition over to the rest of the presentation being focused on Switch 2 exclusive games. So within that first 10, 15 minutes, what they could announce coming to Switch 1, I was really trying to rack my brain about what they could announce. And so just kind of going off of what we already know that's coming to the Switch 1 in 2026, we know about Tomodachi Life, Living the Dream, as well as Rhythm Heaven Groove, I believe is the name of it. So with that line of thinking, I think we may continue to see more Switch 1 games of a similar vein that are, I hate to say niche, because really Tomodachi Life is not niche. Rhythm Heaven is. It's never been like a massive system seller, but Tomodachi Life on 3DS I think sold like 10 million units or something crazy like that. So it's not really niche, but both of them are kind of more casual games. And so they're probably games that aren't like a super high budget. Like I can't imagine that Tomodachi Life is an extremely expensive game to make. All the me characters, they kind of have like a AI voice, that sounds like Siri on your phone or something. And really, there's not even a lot of content. At least there wasn't in Tomodachi on 3DS. It was more about just like all the weird situations and scenarios that you could watch your me characters get into. It was all just kind of like concentrated on that one island, and there was like a handful of places you could check out, but you weren't even like a playable character with a move set. You were just this disembodied entity kind of looking over everything. So I can't imagine it's a very expensive game to produce. Same with Rhythm Heaven, because that game uses a lot of 2D assets. It's kind of similar to WarioWare, where each of the rhythm games has kind of a different art style, but generally they're pretty simplistic, kind of minimalistic. So not really pushing any boundaries there from a graphical standpoint. So I think we may continue to see more of that coming to the Switch One, more casual games and games that aren't super expensive to develop, but potentially could still capture a wide audience like Tomodachi Life. So with that in mind, I've got a couple games in particular that I think would be a good fit for Switch One. The first one being a new Nintendogs. So we've not seen a new Nintendogs game since the 3DS, but the original one sold like incredibly well. I don't know exactly what the sales numbers were on back on the original DS, but I mean, like it was in the tens of millions. I know that. That's one. Nintendo's not really done anything with that franchise in a very, very long time. But I think that would be kind of an easy thing they could put out. Like it's not going to cost that much, I wouldn't think, to make a new Nintendogs game. And maybe the audience for that game isn't really there that much anymore. I don't know how well it would sell on Switch because it Nintendogs definitely does seem like one of those franchises that would lend itself very well to having a mobile game. But I don't know if Nintendo's going to do that or not. But I think, a Nintendogs game coming to Switch One that maybe also has, can take advantage of the Switch Two with like, pointer control or like mouse controls rather, so you can pet your dog by, using the mouse or throw a frisbee that way. I don't know. I could see that happening. So that's one that I'm going to say that could be a Switch One game that we might see in 2026. And also, I'm going to say a new Flipnote Studio. I don't know that's kind of a series that I loved Flipnote back in the day. That's a big reason that I got really into making animations and why I want to work in animation someday. But yeah, I used to make like hundreds of cartoons on Flipnote Studio back on the DS. And with the 3DS, they had a new version of Flipnote Studio that added like some extra features and things. And, it never really took off the way the first one did because the first one was like a pretty big deal, I think. They had this whole thing called Flipnote Hatena or Flipnote Hatena. I don't really know how you pronounce it. I guess it's a Japanese word. I don't really know what it means. Almost like YouTube or something. It's where, it was this dedicated website where people would upload their Flipnote animations and you could watch them and give them, I think, like stars or something was the equivalent of like leaving a like. And there were a lot of them that would get really popular, and it was just really cool. But then on 3DS, like they had announced it, and then it came out in Japan, but then it took years and years before it ever came to the United States, which was a real shame. And when it did, it didn't really have any like online sharing features, or they were really stripped down because I think Nintendo was really afraid of like the liabilities or like the legalities of like kids being able to like share videos and stuff with each other. So they kind of backed down from doing that. But I don't know. I think it's time they could bring something like that back. The Switch doesn't come with a stylus pen, but I think that could be something that they sell separately. I have a style. There's like ones you can get, that you can buy like third party styluses and stuff to be able to draw on the the handheld screen, and then you'd be able to dock it and you could play your animations on the TV and things like that. And if Nintendo's still weird about being able to share your animations and stuff with minors, then like they could just do it a thing where you can easily share your animations to Twitter and other social media platforms like that instead. But yeah, I think that would be really cool to see them bring back, have a more robust set of features where you can do like multiple different layers and a wider range of colors. Because the color palette was very, very limited before, but they could expand that and have like fill tools and other things just to make it a lot more modernized and more you know feasible as a alternative to something like uh, you know Adobe Animate or something that people might want to use to make little flash animations. Maybe even you can make them longer than a minute. Maybe you could make a full animated movie. I don't know. And export it to your SD card and then send it to your computer or wherever. I think that would be really cool. And again, I was just thinking in terms of along the lines of Rhythm Heaven and Tomodachi, just like what's some more kind of casual games that probably wouldn't be that expensive to make but could be very successful. And that's kind of the two that came to mind was Nintendogs and Flipnote Studio. So will we get those? I don't know. I feel less confident about Flipnote Studio, but I don't know. I think they would both be great to see come back after all these years. Um, Beyond that, I think it's feasible. We might also see one or two ports, like Wii U ports, over to the Switch. Most Wii U games have been ported, but there's still a handful that haven't. Probably the biggest standout at this point is Yoshi's Woolly World. So I'm going to say that we could maybe see that coming to Switch 1 during this presentation. And again, the Switch 2 is backwards compatible, so you'll be able to play it on that as well. Maybe the Switch 2 version will even have a higher resolution, in 4K or something, so you can really see all those individual strands of yarn and even more clarity. But yeah, I think that one makes the most sense. There's also like Kirby, what is it, Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, that claymation game, where you would like draw on the gamepad, and Kirby was like a little ball, and he'd follow the path that you make. That one's not been ported over yet, but I don't think we're going to get that this year. Because we've got the Kirby Air Riders coming out in November, and we also just had the Kirby DLC, whatever you want to call it, the Switch 2 edition that was basically DLC that added new content to Forgotten Land, Starcross World it was called. So I don't think we're going to get even more Kirby on top of that. I think that's a little oversaturating the market with too much Kirby. To be fair, both of those are Switch 2 games and not Switch 1, but still I don't think they would be announcing a third Kirby game right now. Nate the Hate also, again, he's been right about a lot of things. He said probably, this was like several months ago, he said that Nintendo's working on a like an HD remake or port or something of Kirby Planet Robobot. So I don't know. I don't know what order we're going to get all these Kirby games in, but yeah, I definitely don't think that now is the time that we would be seeing the Rainbow Curse come over to Switch. Maybe someday, but not in this presentation. Otherwise, we finally got Xenoblade X ported over from the Wii U to Switch. Pretty much all that leaves, there's like Star Fox Zero, but that game was not successful, so I don't think it's coming over. There's Nintendo Land, which I still hope that maybe someday, some way, they can adapt some of those mini games to work on Switch, because I loved some of those, like Metroid Blast and Luigi's Ghost Mansion and Mario Chase were a ton of fun. But yeah, I don't think we're going to be seeing that here. So yeah, really, as far as Wii U ports go, I think pretty much the only strong candidate is Yoshi's Woolly World. So we've got that. Otherwise, games that could come to Switch 1, a new Mario Baseball. Which I've been saying that for a very long time. I think a lot of people have. That's like the only major Mario sport franchise that's not represented on Switch yet, for the most part. I guess you could also argue there's not a new Mario Baseball. But kind of the main pillars of Mario sports games really are, golf, tennis, Mario Strikers, which is soccer, and baseball. Excuse me. But we've not had a new Mario baseball since, like, I don't know, 20. Gosh, when did that come out? Mario Super Sluggers, like 2008, maybe something like that. 2009. I don't know. It's been a very long time, over 15 years. And those games are made by Bandai Namco, and which they've been busy. They've got a lot of other stuff they're working on, even like in partnership with Nintendo. Like Bandai Namco is helping Sakurai and his team, Sora, work on the new Kirby Air Riders game. So maybe they've kind of got their hands full. Also, this month they're coming out with Pac-Man World 2 Repack, which I'm super excited for. Next month they're coming out with the new Katamari game, which I'm also really excited for. They also just released that new Everybody's Golf game. So Namco, they've been pretty busy. They've had a lot of stuff. They got the new Little Nightmares 3 coming out here in like a month or so. So they might be a little too bogged down. Maybe we're not going to get a new Mario Baseball right now. But that is something I'd really love to see. And if we do get one, I don't think that needs to be a Switch 2 exclusive. I think that would be perfectly fine as a Switch 1 game, and a good late generation game to get for the Switch 1. Otherwise, I think we're long overdue, just like we're overdue for a new Mario Baseball. I think we're also overdue for a new Wario Land game. And this is one, they could have a similar art style to the last Wario Land game, which also came out on the Wii back like 15 years ago. Wario Land Shake It, which had a really beautiful, like, hand-drawn 2D art style that looked like, you're playing a cartoon, basically. And so I would love to see them do that again, but, with even more impressive 2D animation, kind of like the jump from Rayman Origins to Rayman Legends. I think that could look really beautiful. But yeah, I think with 2D hand-drawn games like that, even though they are very, very pretty, you look at something like Hollow Knight or Cuphead, or like they can run on a Switch 1 perfectly fine. So if they do make a new Wario Land, I don't think that's anything where like they would have to make it exclusive to the Switch 2 or anything, because I think graphically it could run on the last gen hardware perfectly fine and still look absolutely beautiful. Would we actually see it here? I mean, it's been what, like a year and a half. When was it that Princess Peach Showtime came out? Was that the name of the game? The game was kind of forgettable, but it was made by Goodfeel, and they're the team who they tend to make the Yoshi games, Yoshi's Woolly World, Yoshi's Crafted World. They also made Kirby's Epic Yarn, but they also did the last Wario Land game. So I feel like it just makes sense to have for Nintendo to get them to make another one. I feel like, we don't know if Wario is going to play a role in the new Mario movie sequel or not. I hope he's there. But if so, then I think Nintendo really needs to get the ball rolling with making Wario a lot more relevant again, the way they have for Donkey Kong. And Wario, he has been getting a lot of the WarioWare games, which are really fun. Don't get me wrong. I love WarioWare, all the 5-second micro games and everything. But he needs like a new mainline Wario game, because the WarioWare series, they're kind of more spin-offs. It's mini games, it's kind of party games, but an actual core adventure game starring Wario, I think we're due a new one of those. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of like the first party games that I could see potentially getting announced coming to Switch 1. Obviously, I don't expect all of these, but maybe some combination, maybe one or two of these, or maybe none, who knows. But just what I would like to see, and that I definitely think is possible. But moving on to, in terms of third-party games, a couple big ones that come to mind. So Ubisoft, they just very recently, like days ago, celebrated Rayman's 30th anniversary. This year marks 30 years. I believe it's 30 years since the first Rayman game, and they relaunched their X page, or their Twitter page, which had been defunct before. They changed the profile banner and everything to reflect the anniversary year. And they made a post, talking about how they would be celebrating, Rayman throughout the rest of the year. But up to that point, I scrolled back, and the last tweet from that Rayman account was in like 2021 or two or something like that. Like it's been like a few years since they've posted anything. But the fact that they're revamping it gives me hope that there could be a coming announcement. We do know that they are working on some sort of a brand new Rayman game. They've talked about it themselves, but seemingly it's not ready to show yet. That may be a long ways off. But to hold us over in the meanwhile, I think it would be awesome if they were to give us a collection, it could just be a bare bones port of Rayman 1, 2, and 3. They could call it the Rayman Raymastered Collection. I think that would be a fun name that they could go with. Um, but yeah, I think it would be a real shame if we don't get something for Rayman's 30th anniversary in terms of like an actual game, like a tangible product. Um, so that's what I would like to see, a collection of Rayman 1, 2, and 3, or at least like one of those. Like Rayman 2, I think is maybe considered the most popular of the trilogy, so port over that one or port over the first game. Just something Rayman would be great, especially since they had him in. There was that whole DLC in the last Mario and Rabbids game, Sparks of Hope, where they redid Rayman's design and stuff, and he looked great in that. So yeah, there was also a rumor several months ago. This might have been close to like a year ago. I don't remember. Which it was kind of weird. I don't know if I really believe that rumor, but that supposedly, I guess Nintendo had reached out to Ubisoft and asked them to put something together for Rayman to put out on the Switch 1, just so that way the Switch 1 library had more games, like to get people excited about. But to me, that's weird. Like, the console holders actually do that? Like, reach out to third parties and, like, ask them specifically, hey, will you make this game? I mean, like, if it's a collaboration thing, if it's like, again, reaching out to Namco, like, hey, would you make a new Mario Baseball using our IP? But, like, reaching out to a company that you don't own and asking them to make a new game featuring an IP that you don't own, like, that just seems kind of weird. Like, unless Nintendo's gonna, like, fund it or something, like if they're going to publish it or pay some of the development costs or something, then I don't know why Ubisoft would have any obligation to listen to them. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you remember that rumor, but I remember that was a thing. I think like Nintendo Life and other places had covered it, but that was a strange one to me. But still, I think that could be happening, even if I don't think Nintendo necessarily reached out and asked Ubisoft to do it. I think that might be like it would just make a lot of business sense for Ubisoft if they want to get people excited for the new Rayman game they're working on, and probably just some easy money. I don't think it would cost that much probably to just port over those old games. They've done it time and time again. They ported Rayman 2 to like everything. It was on the DS, it was on the 3DS, so just port it again. If you want to go the extra mile and remake it, that'd be awesome. But pretty easy to please here. Just port it over, and that'll be fine. Other potential Switch 1 games, third-party games they could announce. Nintendo's had a strong relationship with Square Enix, and we'll definitely talk about them more as we get into Switch 2 games. But for the Switch 1, the HD 2D series has been really successful. They did Dragon Quest 3 last year. Dragon Quest 1 and 2 are going to be coming out later this year. Plus, they've done all the Octopath games and all this other stuff. They got that new Elliot game or whatever that they announced. Triangle Strategy. Just, lots of different stuff in the realm of the HD 2D art style. So, going off of that, I think another one that they could potentially announce, I think we're maybe getting to that time where it may be time for a new Chrono Trigger game, or a remake rather of Chrono Trigger. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. I had to cut because an alarm was going off. I don't know if you could hear that, but it was causing me to lose focus. Anyway, so Chrono Trigger, I think people have been asking, begging for years for Square Enix to remaster it, and I've never played Chrono Trigger myself, but I've always heard great things about it. People say it's one of, if not the best game of all time. I know it originally released on the Super Nintendo, and it was since ported to the DS, and I think it even has a PC version available on Steam that you can buy. Maybe they'll just port that version over to Switch. I don't know, but yeah, whether it's an HD 2D remake or whether it's just like a port of the Steam version, kind of like how they did the Final Fantasy like 1 through 6 collection, the pixel remasters or whatever, that started off as like a PC thing and then eventually came over to consoles. Something Chrono Trigger. I think it's long overdue. I think people would be really excited, and I would definitely pick it up and try it out for myself. I'm not the biggest JRPG guy, but I've heard enough good things about it that I really would love to play it. I know, like the Dragon Quest games, it's got art done by the late Dragon Ball Z creator Akira Toriyama. So yeah, I think that would be a really cool game for them to bring over. Additionally, Capcom, Mega Man. So they've done all these Mega Man collections, you know, the Legacy collections, all the old NES games and Super Nintendo, even the Game Boy games you can play on Switch Online. They brought over the Game Boy Advance games, you know, with the Battle Network series and Mega Man X and Zero and whatever, all these different Mega Man games. I think it would be really, really great to get a collection of the two Mega Man Legends games, which were the 3D ones, where instead of just, you know, side-scrolling left to right, you've actually got a Z-axis you can move along. I've never played those games. I've never been the biggest Mega Man fan, to be honest, the biggest Mega fan. But I don't know. I'm very interested to try the 3D games. So I think that would be really awesome if they were to bring those over to Switch 1. They could definitely run. The first one was a PS1 game. I'm not sure what Mega Man Legends 2 was on, to be honest, if it was PS2 or maybe it was also on PS1. I really don't know. But the first one I think was also on N64. I don't know about the second one. But yeah, I think it would be really cool if they brought those over, or maybe, who knows, maybe they're working on Mega Man 12. Maybe they announced that. I don't know, but I think it's time. I think we're overdue for something new in the realm of Mega Man, and I think the two Legends games would be a pretty good way to cap off the fact. I mean, they've ported pretty much everything else, right? Like, what's left? So yeah, and you know, they do all the Street Fighter collections and stuff, and I feel like Capcom is one of the better companies when it comes to video game preservation and bringing back all that old content. So yeah, that's one that I think would be really cool to see here that wouldn't have to run on Switch 2 hardware. So let me look at my list here. I think that's the majority of stuff that I'm predicting coming to the Switch 1. I'm looking to see if there's any other standouts. Okay, yeah, I see one thing that I do want to talk about as well. What else have we got here? Yeah, okay. So one other thing for the Switch 1. You know, so we know Metroid Prime 4 has been announced. It's going to be coming to the Switch 1 and the Switch 2. We still don't have Metroid Prime 2 and 3 on Switch yet, which is really baffling. So I was kind of thinking, like, well, Nintendo seems to have maybe backed themselves into a weird corner here, because what do? Because they remade the first game. I don't know that they're going to do a full ground-up HD remake of the second and third games. If they are, it's kind of too little too late to get those out before Metroid Prime 4, because that game's supposed to be releasing this year. So I was like, well, the second game was a GameCube game. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, I think, is the name of that one. I never actually played 2 or 3. So I was like, well, they could put that on GameCube NSO. The problem with that is there's a couple problems. One being, so where does that leave Metroid Prime 3 Corruption? Because that was a Wii game. And as of right now, Wii games aren't on NSO, and I don't think they're coming anytime soon. I think maybe one day down the road, but you're talking maybe like 3 years from now or something, maybe like 2028 or something, I don't know. Um, and also, the GameCube games are only available on Switch 2. So remember, Metroid Prime 4 is coming to the Switch 1 as well as Switch 2. So if you put Metroid Prime 2 on GameCube NSO for people who, to catch up who maybe missed out on it the first time around, um, if they don't have a Switch 2 yet, if they were planning on picking up Metroid Prime 4 for their Switch 1, then they're still going to be going in without the knowledge of 2 or 3. So what I think the best solution might be would be for Nintendo to still do a Metroid Prime trilogy. Maybe this is something that they shadow drop, because I don't think they actually have a first party game coming in September. So they could do what they did with the Metroid Prime remake a couple years ago and shadow drop it, and then maybe like a week or so later make it available, like, the physical version at retail to pick up. But but yeah, I feel like it just makes the most sense. Do a trilogy, but it's just like ports. It's just HD up-resed versions of like the original like GameCube slash Wii versions of the game. Basically, just the same trilogy like they had on Wii, but it's in HD now and widescreen, and maybe has a couple of extra features like pointer controls, or if you are playing it on Switch 2, to have the mouse controls and have like dual analog stick support. Just more ways to play, more options like that. Maybe they could add online for the multiplayer modes. I don't know. But to me, that just makes more sense than because again, if they want to get Metroid Prime 2 and 3 out before 4, then to me it just seems kind of weird if they were to bundle 2 and 3 together on store shelves. You looking at Switch games to buy, and there's Metroid Prime 2 and 3 collection. It's like, okay, why is the first one not included in this? Again, they do have their separate standalone remake of 1, but I think they could just have like the original. That way you're getting kind of 2 different versions of the game. If you already own the remake, it's not the same version of Metroid Prime. It's the original, So I don't know. I think that could be something they could do. Again, just to get it in more people's hands, because like they did this before Pikmin 4 came out. They gave players a way to play Pikmin 1 and 2, because they'd already ported over Pikmin 3 like a couple years earlier, but then they did Pikmin 1 and 2 together as a standalone collection. And I think it makes more sense if you're going to re-release 2 games for it to be 1 and 2 together versus 2 and 3 together, because then it just feels like you're missing something, like something was taken out of it, a chunk was just cut out. So that's why I think it could be a trilogy instead of just being 2 and 3, even though we already have a way to play 1. So that might be kind of a convoluted explanation, but hopefully that makes sense. And then the last thing that I could see possibly coming to Switch 1, and this is where we kind of get into some discussion about Mario's 40th anniversary, and there had been some rumors last month that we would maybe be getting 2, if not even 3 different Nintendo presentations this month, one of which being a Mario 40th anniversary direct. I don't know that that would have its own dedicated direct. It did back for the 35th anniversary back in 2020, but that was during the pandemic, so I think there was a lot of weird stuff going on that year. I think Mario's anniversary would have looked very different if it hadn't been for the pandemic. So I don't necessarily expect it to get its own separate presentation. That's not to say it couldn't. But if it did, in terms of potential games that they could announce, I could see some of those being Switch 1 games, that again also work on Switch 2. Some people have been throwing out the idea maybe they reissue Super Mario 3D All-Stars, but maybe it's a Switch 2 edition, like they've been doing all these other Switch 2 editions. And the differentiator being that it adds Super Mario Galaxy 2 to the collection, since that was missing before. I think that would be a really bad idea to go the route of making it a Switch 2 edition. I think if they do reissue Super Mario 3D All-Stars, it needs to be compatible with Switch 1, because there's no reason that Mario Galaxy 2, being a Wii game, couldn't run on the base Switch 1. And I feel like that would make a lot of people really, really mad if it's like, well, why do I have to have a Switch 2 to play this Wii game, Nintendo? So I don't think that would be in their best interest to do that. So I think if they do reissue it, then it would need to be for the Switch One, and they could make it a thing where, if you already own Mario 3D All Stars, you could pay like $20 or something to upgrade it to also get Mario Galaxy 2 included. If they wanted to throw in 3D Land, that'd be great too. Am I expecting it though? I really don't know. I really don't think that I see them doing like reissuing Mario 3D All Stars with extra content, or doing like a Mario Galaxy 2 standalone HD remaster with like new content, like plus Lubba's lunchtime mode or something. I don't know. Because I do think that in a few years, Nintendo is probably going to put Wii games on NSO. Just the fact that they're willing to do GameCube games, and I mean, Wii is pretty much comparable in terms of like power. Wii games are basically as modern as GameCube games. Roughly the same file size, I would imagine. Because the Wii is basically just a GameCube, but with motion controls. So yeah, I'm pretty convinced now that we've gotten GameCube on NSO that Wii's coming later. And I think from Nintendo's perspective, they might feel like if they put out Mario Galaxy 2 in like a separate collection or standalone or whatever, that whenever they do add Wii games to NSO, if that kind of devalues it a little bit. I think that's kind of why that Mario 3D All Stars was a limited time release in the first place, because I think they knew that down the road they would release Mario 64 separately on Switch Online. And also, we know now that Mario Sunshine is going to be coming to Switch Online now that there's GameCube games. So I think that was probably always the plan. So yeah, I think for that reason, I don't know that they're going to bring it back, because I think those are games they can reintroduce down the line when they add more consoles to the online subscription service. Speaking of the online subscription service, though, there are a handful of Mario games on the platforms that are currently available that just haven't been added to the service yet. So for Game Boy or Game Boy Color, we're still missing Super Mario Brothers Deluxe. Wouldn't be the most exciting game they could announce, but they could, especially since this is the 40th anniversary of that NES game, Super Mario Brothers. So it could make sense sometime this year for them to add the deluxe version that was on the Game Boy Color. I've never played it, so I would be kind of interested to try it out. I know it's got different kind of like missions and stuff, and like you can go through the levels, and there's added like I think Yoshi eggs and like red coins to find and stuff that add some extra replayability. So I think that would be interesting. I would definitely check it out and play it if they did bring that over. Also, you've got on the Game Boy Advance, they've not brought over Mario Party Advance yet, which is not really one of the better received Mario Party games. It's really it's a very loose adaptation of Mario Party. But I don't know. I think there's some enjoyment to be had with it as a single player, almost sort of kind of like an RPG sort of game where you're going around and you're doing side quests and stuff, and then you're playing mini games. So maybe we get that this year. I'm trying to think. In terms of N64 games, I don't really think there's anything that they could bring over, unless if they brought over like the Japanese exclusive like Mario Artist games or something, which would be interesting. And then for Super Nintendo, they just recently did Mario Paint. Beyond that, there's like what's that game? Is it Yoshi Safari? I think that's like kind of like a first-person shooter, but you had to have like a light gun peripheral, so I don't know if that would be feasible or not on Switch if they put that on the Switch Online. But yeah, I think probably the ones that have the best chance, probably Mario Party Advance and also Super Mario Brothers Deluxe, as I said. And then GameCube games, there's a ton they could draw from there, since that platform's only just now rolling out. So they could do Mario Kart Double Dash. That's, I think, a fan favorite racing game. I don't know if I see that coming out this year, since we just got a new Mario Kart, being Mario Kart World. So I think Nintendo wants people to be focused on that right now, so they probably don't want to distract with a separate Mario Kart game, be kind of competing with themselves, I guess. But then otherwise, although I guess I should say this isn't really talking about Switch 1 at this point. We're talking about Switch 2 because, we're still talking about Mario's 40th anniversary, but, any GameCube games they potentially add, not going to be backwards compatible on the Switch 1, unfortunately. But they could do the Mario parties. I'm sure they're coming eventually. Mario parties 4 through 7. I'm not the biggest fan of 4, but I think 5, 6, and 7 are all three like really, really great Mario Party games. So I would love to have those brought over. I do think they will eventually. Whether it happens now or not, I don't know. Then also you've got I don't know. I'm trying to think what other Mario. Well, you got like Mario, the first Mario Baseball game, Mario Superstar Baseball, and then Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. Those are some games they could potentially bring over. Um, Dance Revolution Mario Mix if they want to get really weird. Um, but uh, but yeah, there's probably other Mario games on GameCube I'm not thinking of right off. Um, I don't. I really don't think we'll get GameCube though, because I think in the April presentation they already kind of lined out what to expect from GameCube games for like the next 6 months. They showed us like Chibi Robo is going to be coming to the system, and it has now. That's since released. Same with Mario Strikers. That's on the platform now. Probably next month for Halloween in October, we'll probably get Luigi's Mansion. We know that one's coming. Pokemon, was it Pokemon Coliseum, I think, and Super Mario Sunshine. We might get Mario Sunshine this month. That might be a thing for the 40th anniversary. Not very exciting because you can already play that on Switch in Mario 3D All Stars, but we do know that it's coming. So since they kind of already laid that out, I don't think we'll be seeing any new GameCube games until the ones that they've already told us are coming get released. I'd love to be wrong about that. Because in particular, I think would be really hype in the Nintendo Direct if this is kind of outside of the Mario anniversary discussion, but if they announced Smash Brothers Melee, that would be a big pop off moment. Because like online, being able to play with friends online and being able to play it on the go portably, Melee, oh my god, that would be so exciting. Especially considering, I mean, we're not going to be getting a new Smash Brothers game anytime soon because Sakurai's got his hands full right now. He's busy working on Kirby Air Riders. But I think that would be really incredible if they announced that and put that out sometime this year. But I don't know. We'll see. And the first one, Smash Brothers 64. There was that whole you might have seen recently. I forget what the name of the game is, but they just announced I think it's like a third party N64 game that's coming out on the platform. It might already be out, but it lines up with a previous. Nintendo had previously put out a trailer about Nintendo 64 Switch Online, and they kind of like blur out a bunch of games in the background, but people have like unblurred it and found that the box art matches up with different games that aren't currently available on the platform. And one of the ones that people found was the original Super Smash Brothers. There was also like Glover, which would be kind of a weird one because Glover just got like a $30 like HD remaster, which kind of sucks to be honest. But based on that leak, if that's true, Yoshi also had a similar thing where Nintendo may or may not have accidentally leaked it, where they had this was back in maybe like April or March or something when they were showing the compatibility of like all of your Switch 1 games being playable on Switch 2, and they had an icon that showed Yoshi's Woolly World, even though as of this point in time that's not a Switch game. So could that point to us getting Smash Brothers 64 before too long? Maybe. I'd love to see it. I think also included on that was maybe Donkey Kong 64. I don't think it had Diddy Kong Racing listed, but that's got to be coming though, right? Because Nintendo and Rare have, Nintendo and Microsoft have such a close partnership now, and they've been willing to, do all this collaborative stuff like bringing the Banjo-Kazooie games to NSO, and I mean putting Banjo in Smash Brothers. So we'll have to wait and see. I do think they're inevitable, but it's just a matter of when rather than if. But yeah, so that is something else that we could potentially see. Conker's Bad Fur Day. That's another one. They've got the whole mature app now, so I mean they could just throw it on there for the N64 games. But beyond that, for Mario's anniversary, again, just sticking to just kind of going back to Switch One games. There was the rumored collection of new Super Mario Brothers games. That the rumor ended up being like debunked. There was like a fake leak where somebody put out like supposed box art that showed the original DS New Super Mario Brothers game, as well as New Super Mario Brothers 2 for the 3DS, and New Super Mario Brothers Wii, all being in one collection on Switch. Even though that rumor was dispelled, could that still happen? Possibly. It would be interesting. It would be neat. I know a lot of people are kind of got sick of the new Super Mario Brothers games because they all do feel pretty iterative and kind of reuse a lot of the same assets and stuff. So I don't know how exciting it would be to the average person, but those games did sell extremely well. So from a business standpoint, it could make sense. I don't know if I see it happening though, because I do think Nintendo is going to continue to expand their Switch Online library. It seems to be maybe every couple of years or something we get a new platform. So I think probably next up is DS. We might get here in a couple of years, and then maybe a couple of years after that we get Wii. So again, I just think if they re-release or like port all those games now, then that kind of makes that online service less valuable later on, because it's like oh, now we've got DS games, you can play New Super Mario Brothers on your Switch, but it's like, well, we already can if we got the New Super Mario Brothers collection, so they might hold off on that for that reason. I think it'd be neat to see though, because I do enjoy those games. They're kind of guilty pleasure games, even if they're again maybe not the most creative. If they did do a port like that, maybe they could go back and add like proper co-op to the original New Super Mario Brothers, because it was supposed to have it from the beginning, but then I guess they dropped it due to hardware limitations, and they just kind of had like a side mode where you could do like a Mario versus Luigi thing where you try to get stars, and then for 2 and then for Wii they added co-op. So I don't know. It'd be cool if they did do this collection, if they went back and did that for 1, and maybe brought back like the side mini games. I don't know how that would work, since they were all kind of like touch screen based, and in a lot of cases required 2 screens. But again, I don't really know that I see this collection even happening to begin with. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it as far as stuff that I could see coming to the Switch 1. We've spent about 50 minutes talking about that. And so only just now are we actually getting into the Switch 2 exclusive stuff. Beyond, we talked a little bit about GameCube NSO. But other than that, so I think we'll probably see some more Switch 2 editions of Switch 1 games, like we've seen with Mario Party Jamboree, like we've seen with Kirby. I think maybe the most likely candidate is Pikmin 4. At least I really want that to be the case. And you could say, like, well, that might not be a high priority for Nintendo, because Pikmin games have never really sold all that well to begin with. But, on one hand, it's like it's Miyamoto's baby. He's got them everywhere. They make a cameo in the Mario movie. They make a cameo in the Universal theme park. He did the whole Pikmin Bloom mobile app. So Miyamoto clearly really wants Pikmin to be a big deal. And also, Kirby in the Forgotten Land, is the best-selling Kirby game, but it only sold maybe it might have sold 5 million units, which is nothing to sneeze at. But, that's like a fraction of, for example, Luigi's Mansion 3, which hasn't gotten a Switch 2 edition or anything. So, yeah, I think Pikmin 4, I could definitely see it getting a Switch 2 edition. I'd love to see them add a snow level to the game. If you know anything about me, I'm a sucker for snow levels. I love snow and ice worlds in games. And it's kind of weird because Pikmin 4 has a level that represents each of the different seasons. There's a fall level, there's a spring level, there's a summer level, and there's the one level that takes place inside of a house. But there's no winter level, and that really upsets me. Pikmin 1 didn't have a winter level, but Pikmin 2 did, Pikmin 3 did, but not Pikmin 4. So I would love to see that. They could update the game because the game already really it looks really nice on Switch One. But it could be 4K, 60 frames a second now. Would just look all the more beautiful. They could go back and add some extra new content like a proper co-op mode, kind of like they did with Pikmin 3 when they ported that over as 3 Deluxe to the Switch. They added where you could play through the whole single player campaign with a second person. Um, so I think with the Switch 2's extra hardware, it would probably be capable of running that just fine, having split screen, having to render everything twice. Maybe not at 4K. Maybe the resolution would take a little bit of a hit. But I think that would be a really fun way to experience the game. I always love when games add co-op. They could also add a proper mission mode like Pikmin 3, and I think 2 had one as well, where you do these little time challenges and things. They've already got kind of like the Dandori stuff incorporated in the main game, but kind of like a separate thing. And with some of those challenges, they had like a little co-op thing where you could like point. It's kind of like Mario Galaxy with like the Luma, where the second player is just kind of pointing and clicking. Not very engaging gameplay. There's just a cursor on the screen, but actually having them being able to do all the same things as the first player in that mission mode would be really cool. Some new maps because there really wasn't a whole lot for the for like the 2 player versus mode. So some extra maps would be nice, and also bring back bingo battle because that was like a really big thing that people loved in 3, but just wasn't here in Pikmin 4 for whatever reason. And there was also no online, so they could add that as well. It's kind of a lot of new content. We're probably not going to get all that, though it would be really nice to see. But yeah, I feel like Pikmin 4 is one of the strongest options to get a Switch 2 version at this time. I don't. I predict that in this presentation, if we do get this September Direct next week at the time of recording this, I'm going to go out on a limb and say we're not going to get more than 2 Switch 2 editions. I think it's going to be a thing where Nintendo's going to space them out over the course of the Switch 2 life cycle in the same way that they would kind of space out Wii U ports on the Switch 1. If that makes sense. So I think another one that could get announced. There's a few different options. They could do, and I'll say this doesn't really include ones that are just like free. They could drop those anytime they want to. Like I could see them doing a free update for Xenoblade Chronicles X, to where that game runs in like 4K, 60 frames a second. But in terms of ones that actually add like a substantial amount of new content that you have to pay like $20 for or something like that, I'm predicting there's not going to be more than 2 announced during this presentation. And I think Pikmin 4 has maybe the best chance, but I think another one we could get. Really, there's a few different Mario games they could choose from. And again, with this being Mario's 40th, they could do a Switch 2 edition of Super Mario Brothers Wonder, because it is kind of curious that they put out like a 4K or whatever Switch 2 edition that you can get for free to upgrade New Super Mario Brothers U, which is a much older game and not as positively received as Wonder. So it does make you think that maybe they are planning something bigger for this. What new content would it add? I don't know. They could add like a new world or something, or maybe just like a separate campaign. But I do think that this game is a very strong candidate for extra content because the New Super Mario Brothers games tend to get DLC. New Super Mario Brothers U had the whole Luigi expansion that kind of like doubled the content of the game. The levels were shorter, but they were harder, so it kind of evened out. But yeah, it doubled the amount of levels. It was like $20 to upgrade on Wii U. And then before that, New Super Mario Brothers 2 on the 3DS, I think was like the very first Nintendo game ever to get paid DLC. They had like it wasn't that great, to be honest. They had that whole side mode. I forget what it was called, Gold Rush or Coin Rush or something. But where you'd play like 3 levels back to back and try to get as many coins as you could. But yeah, that was a paid DLC expansion thing to add new levels to it. So yeah, I definitely think Super Mario Brothers Wonder is a strong contender to get extra content. Um, it'd be great to see like some new revamped boss battles because the base game, the bosses were very lackluster. They could do new playable characters. We already got Daisy, which was really cool in the base game. They could add, Rosalina or Pauline, or if they wanted to get real crazy, they could add Wario and Waluigi. I don't really see that one happening, but it would be cool. Um, they could add like some new badges and also new like badge challenges that could be pretty cool. I'm not going to make any predictions for what those badges, how they might augment your abilities, because I really don't know. I've not thought about it. Um, but I could see them maybe doing something like that. They could also do some new amiibos for Mario's 40th anniversary. They could do Mario amiibo that are themed to like different game. They could do like a Tanuki Mario amiibo because we've got the Cat Mario and Cat Peach, but a Tanuki Mario that would be something cool and different. They could do a Mario World one where he's got his cape and maybe he's riding Yoshi. They could do Mario 64 where he's got the wing cap and he's flying, or they could even make it look kind of low poly. That would be really neat. They could do Mario Sunshine where he's got flood, using his like water like propelling him. I think that could look really cool. I can imagine that now, how the water is like transparent. They could do Mario Galaxy. Of course, they've already got the 3D World and Odyssey amiibos. But so that's something they could do for Mario's anniversary. Real quick, I don't know why I got talking about amiibos because there's other possible Switch 2 editions they could do. So again, I think there might only be like one of these in addition to the Pikmin one. But if not Super Mario Brothers Wonder, they could also do Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, because I think even like in the coding of that game, people saw where there's like a 4K version that's just not playable. Like that's just like in the files, but it's not accessible. And people have also, kind of complained about the game being 30 frames per second as opposed to 60, as it was back on the GameCube. So that would kind of just completely quell that complaint that people had if they, release a 60 frames per second version on Switch 2. And it could just be, again, one of those free upgrades that comes down the line. Or they could go the route of doing a full Switch 2 edition that adds extra content for like $20. They could do like a whole Paper Luigi side mode of his like crazy adventure that he's on. That would be really, really cool to see. And they could even make it sort of like a prequel to Super Paper Mario, which was, the one that came after this, the third game in the series, by having Luigi kind of make references to Mr. L, where he talks about like wishing that he was like a superhero and stuff. And maybe we see the Mr. L costume or something. I don't know. But I think that would be really cool. Maybe even like kind of tease like showing Count Blick or Dementio or something. I don't know. That might be too unrealistic, but I think that would be really cool. Or they could do a Super Mario Maker 2 Switch 2 edition, because people have talked about, with the mouse controls and everything on Switch 2, that it would just be perfect for a Mario Maker game, since the first one was made with the gamepad in mind, and you didn't really have that with the second one. Which I thought the user interface on the second one was really good. I mean, like, even though you don't have like the touch screen, like it's a little confusing at first, but I think after a couple hours your brain gets used to it, and I thought it was very intuitive using the like wheel to the right analog to pick whatever part I wanted to put down. And if I wanted the touch screen that bad, I could just take it out of the dock and make a level in handheld mode. So I never thought it was a big problem, but to other people it was. I don't think that Mario Maker 2 is going to get any new updates, though. I think it's more likely that Nintendo maybe is working on a Mario Maker 3. Or maybe they're even just done with Mario Maker. I could see that being a thing where like Nintendo's just kind of like, yeah, we did it. We made two of them. We did the one on Wii U, but the Wii U wasn't a big financial success, so we were gonna port it over to the Switch 2, or to the Switch, but then we thought like, hey, here's some extra things we could add to it, so we made it a full sequel. And then now we've made Mario Brothers Wonder, and now, after years of not making more 2D Mario games, that's kind of where we're focused again. So we're not gonna make a a Mario Maker 3. I don't know. I hope that's not the case, but I could kind of see that being the thing. As much as I would love a new one, and I'd love for it to be like 3D, like you can make like 3D Mario levels. That would be so cool. Like a sandbox, like your own Mario 64 world. That would be amazing. Um, but I don't see that happening because there was a fan game that released like a year ago or something like that called, I think it was called like Mario Builder 64 or something like that let you just do just that. It let you make your own Mario 64 levels. It was really, really cool. But Nintendo, who is notorious for shutting down fan games and stuff like this, I don't think they ever shut it down. I think you can still download that. Um, which tells me if Nintendo isn't shutting it down, that means they don't see it as a competitor toward anything that they're working on, which means they're probably not working on a 3D Mario Maker that lets you make Mario 64 levels, which makes me sad, but it is what it is. So, yeah, I don't know if I see this one getting a Switch 2 edition, and I also don't know if I see a sequel coming anytime soon. I'd love to be wrong about that, but we'll just have to wait and see. Because again, it would be the perfect fit, as people have said, with the mouse controls and everything. But I don't know. And people have said if they do like a Switch 2 edition or make a new one, how they could have Super Mario Brothers Wonder as like a new theme in the game. For me, I don't know if that would be too exciting because it's like which with Mario Wonder there are a lot of new like enemies they could add and stuff that's kind of neat how that function differently. Like there's that one enemy that jumps whenever you jump. The what are they called, like hoppy cats or something like that, and there's some other pretty cool enemies in there. That squirrel thing that like shoots acorns out of you out of its mouth that looks like sandy cheeks or whatever. Those big buffalo things that charge at you. But I don't know. I feel like just in terms of the gameplay, I feel like it would be so similar to New Super Mario Brothers U that I don't know that it would feel all that different. Visually, it would look better, but I feel like it would kind of feel more of the same. So I feel like I'd need something more substantial than just make your own Mario Brothers Wonder levels. So I don't know. Otherwise, I'm trying to think any other potential Switch 2 editions for games. I don't know. I think that's the bulk of it that I can think of for right now. I think maybe someday we can get a Smash Brothers Switch 2 edition that adds like new characters and stuff, but not now because again Sakurai's got his hands full. Um, you know, so yeah. Oh, one of them actually that I think we could get. Maybe we see in this presentation. Maybe not. I don't know. Um, Nintendo Switch Sports that could get a Switch 2 edition that adds substantial new content because I think people had like data mined in the game and found like I guess maybe like there was like a dodgeball mode or something that's not in the final game. They could add that. They could add a bunch of different sports. Maybe they just make a sequel since that game wasn't really that well received, but it did sell extremely well though. I think it sold. I want to say maybe over 10 million copies. So yeah, they could make a new one, or they could just keep adding content to that. It would also work as a Switch 2 edition game with like the whole camera stuff. I feel like that would be one that Nintendo might want to do, where that game's such a casual game anyway, to do like they did with Mario Party Jamboree and Mario Kart World, where like you can see your like people's faces in the corner as you're playing tennis or whatever. Um, so yeah, I think that's a strong candidate as well. Um, I might even say those are the two most likely if I had to put money on it. Pikmin 4. So no, I'm gonna say maybe no Mario, even though this is Mario's anniversary year. But Pikmin 4 and Nintendo Switch Sports being the two games that get a Switch 2 edition. Um, so moving on, outside of Switch 2 editions, Mario Kart World could potentially get some DLC. It might be a little soon for that because the game's only been out for a couple months. But a lot of people, myself included, kind of feel like that game's kind of shallow in terms of content in a lot of ways. So there's hopefully Nintendo's working on some substantial updates to the game. Um, And since Donkey Kong Bonanza just came out recently, they could have some cross promotion stuff there because people have noticed that Donkey Kong and Pauline each only have like one costume, so they could add a bunch of extra costumes. Maybe add like a playable version of like the young Pauline from Bonanza would be cool. And also, people noticed, in the credits for Bonanza, or not Bonanza, but in the credits for Mario Kart World, that King K. Rool's voice actor, as well as the person who does the voice of Void Kong from Donkey Kong Bonanza, their names appear in the credits. Um, Maybe they just voice one of the random enemies that's already in the game, just happens to be the same people doing those voices. I don't know, but could that point to us getting K. Rool and Void Kong in the game? Personally, I think that would be awesome. I'd love to see that. I actually really like Void Kong. I think he was actually a pretty cool villain. Um, so yeah, I think that could be really cool. Maybe do a whole, and this might be too ambitious. Maybe Nintendo's not thought. Maybe they're not anywhere close to being done with a big DLC expansion like that for this game. Um, but if they added like a new like island to explore that's like Donkey Kong Island that adds a bunch of extra levels, they could bring back like DK Summit. It could have a snowy portion, and maybe in that snowy area, there's also like a tropical freeze themed level, and they could bring back, DK Jungle from Mario Kart 7 and 8, and DK Mountain from Double Dash, which was just recently brought back. Then they could also have like some other jungle themed tracks in that on that map that's not necessarily specific to Donkey Kong, but that's similar. Like, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the name of it. What they had, like the Lakeside Park or whatever from the Game Boy Advance game from Super Circuit, and what was the other one that had like the volcano? There was the Lakeside Park, and there was the something else park. I think I'm about to sneeze. But whatever it is, they could bring back those tracks. Um, Grumble Volcano. I don't know. They could, if they're bringing back DK Mountain, they could put that on there too. I think could kind of fit on that island. Um, so I don't know. They could just. I really hope the game gets a lot of substantial DLC, and that for expansion pass subscribers, it'll be free, kind of like the Booster Course Pass was, where you didn't have to pay for that extra content, and just new characters. Give us, again, if they do like a Donkey Kong themed expansion that ties in with Bonanza, they could give us playable Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong, since neither of them are in the game yet, and Dixie was even in she was in Mario Kart Tour, but she's never been in a mainline Mario Kart game, so put her in there. Funky Kong, they brought him back for the Booster Course Pass, only to snatch him away from us again. So bring him back, bring back, or put in Cranky Kong for the first time. He'd be a cool racer to have. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that the game gets substantial DLC. Maybe it's too soon for it now, but if they do, just hypothetically, just bear with me. If they can add a bunch of new like battle maps too, that's on the new island and stuff. So I don't know. Will we actually get all that? Maybe not. The developer did kind of sort of tease a little bit when he was interviewed before the game came out, or around the time it came out, about like Diddy Kong not being in there, and also about there not being a 200cc mode. It was kind of like, yeah, people would like to see it. I don't have anything to say about it at this time, but stay tuned. So it was very, it was more than just no comment. It sort of felt like a hint. Something else that kind of felt like a hint too, and this is kind of segueing into something different, is when Nintendo President Doug Bowser was asked about, a new 3D Mario game, about how we didn't see one in the April presentation. And because Nintendo, they're very specific with their wording, so I'm sure Nintendo, they rehearsed with Doug Bowser what he is supposed to say and what he's not supposed to say. And Kit and Krista have talked before about how important that is, like all the prep work, all the hypothetical questions that goes into getting ready for a big interview like this. And yeah, he was asked about, there not being a 3D Mario, and what he said wasn't the token response that Nintendo usually says, which is like, we have nothing to announce at this time. But what he said was, stay tuned, which to me is a little bit more teasingly than just saying we have nothing to announce. To me, saying stay tuned sounds more like we have something to announce, but not quite yet. So I don't know. We did just have Bonanza, which was made by a lot of the same people from the Mario Odyssey team. So some people think, getting a new 3D Mario game might be a long ways off, possibly several years. But I don't know, because there are a lot of people that worked on Mario Odyssey whose names are not included in Donkey Kong Bonanza. So it seems that the Mario Odyssey team could have split off into two branching teams, and that one team was working on the next 3D Mario while the other team did Bonanza. Because I think he might have been like the leading director of Mario Odyssey, Yoshiaki Koizumi, who's an awesome guy. I love that guy. I love whenever he shows up in Nintendo Directs. He almost kind of became like the new face of Directs after Iwata died, and brings a lot of that same energy and personality. But I don't think he was included in Bonanza's credits at all. So what's he been working on? A new 3D Mario game, maybe. I've been very back and forth on this, if I think that Nintendo is going to announce a new 3D Mario anytime soon. They kind of seem to have most of their lineup for the rest of the year, already. Like Metroid Prime 4 it doesn't have a release date. I think we will get a release date in this presentation. I hope that's not the closer, because they've ended with Metroid Prime 4 in I think at least two other presentations by now, and I really, it doesn't hit the same way as ending with a Smash Brothers character reveal does. So I hope they end with something different. But I do think it'll still show up, and they'll give us kind of a deeper dive into Samus's psychic powers and show off maybe a new area, a new region, and stuff. Fill us in on some of the story information. Probably, actually, they might announce some new Metroid amiibos for Prime 4, because we got new amiibo for Samus Returns on 3DS, and then we also got amiibo for Metroid Dread. We got the Emmy, and then we got Samus wearing that Captain America colored outfit. And then for Samus Returns, we got the squishy Metroid amiibo. So yeah, we could get maybe a Silex amiibo or something, or I don't know, some other character. Would be pretty cool to see. But yeah, I think we'll for sure get a release date for Metroid Prime 4. Beyond that, but yeah, we know of Pokemon Legends EA is coming out, before long. When is that? Is that October? So we've got an October and a November game being Kirby. There could maybe be something for December, but that would be awfully late to put a new 3D Mario. So if they do show us a new 3D Mario, I don't think it'll be coming out this year. The December game might even it could be Prime 4, or it could be, maybe that's when we get Hyrule Warriors, Age of Imprisonment, which I'm not going to rant about that again, but I'm really not that excited about that game. I'd love to see something else Zelda related in the first year of this new console. I'd love to see a ground up remake. There's been some rumors that we might get a remake of Ocarina of Time, that's in 4K and just looks real beautiful. Personally, I would rather see a remake of Twilight Princess, because unlike Ocarina of Time, which is available on Switch Online, Twilight Princess is the one 3D Zelda game that you still can't play on the Switch. And they could bring it over on GameCube NSO. They could bring over Twilight Princess. But I don't know. I think it could be a really cool graphical showcase, because a lot of people say that game's graphics maybe didn't age super well. It kind of goes for a more grittier, kind of realistic art style. And I think that could be really impressive to see that game just remade from the ground up. And Wolf Link, you can see all of his individual strands of fur. I always thought it was kind of neat in that game, if with regular Link anyway. I don't know if it did it with Wolf Link's fur, But regular Link, if you get in the water and then get out of the water, his hair is like darker for a little bit because it's wet, and then it dries, and then it's a little bit lighter again. That was kind of a cool little touch. But I think that game could look so good if they redid it from the ground up. Um, we never got that on the Wii U. They had Twilight Princess HD, which was just kind of an upscaled version. They redid some textures, but it was all the same character models. And during some of those cutscenes, Link is like very like trembly, like the character models kind of like shake a lot. So if they went back and just redid that, I think it could look immaculate. Be one of the best looking games on the system. Really show like how comparable to PS5 or whatever that the Switch 2 actually is. I'd love to see that personally, more so than an Ocarina of Time remake. Am I expecting that now? Probably not. We're probably not going to get any other Zelda games announced before the new Hyrule Warriors comes out, unfortunately, as much as I'd love to see it. But yeah, I don't know. It'd be great to have something Zelda in the first year that's not just a spin-off, but yeah, otherwise, I think we'll see more details on Kirby Air Ride, because Sakurai kind of hinted at the end of his presentation that, or Kirby Air Riders, I should say, Sakurai kind of hinted that there was still a lot more to talk about. So I think that, I think we'll see more characters. I don't think he's shown all the characters yet. The main number one character I'm really wanting to see is Marx. Marx is like my favorite Kirby villain from Superstar. He's insane, and I love evil jester characters. So yeah, I'd like to see him. They could do any number of characters. They could do Poppy Brothers. They could do let's see. They announced Susie. If they could do President Haltman or whatever from Planet Robobot, that would be cool. They could do Taranza and Queen Sectonia from Triple Deluxe. They could do Adeline, I think is her name, the painting girl or whatever. They could do Nana and Popo. I don't know. There's a lot of different options they could do. And it is a Sakurai game. I don't think this will have a roster as big as Smash Brothers, as big as Ultimate or anything, but I think there will be a decent number of characters. Maybe we'll see some new tracks shown off, maybe one or two tracks. And I think the game, he kind of teased something at the end. We had that like pre-rendered trailer that showed some kind of like evil looking character who I guess is maybe the main antagonist of the game. I think this game is going to have a substantial single-player story mode campaign, and I think we might learn more about that in the next Nintendo Direct. That's my prediction for Kirby Air Riders. Beyond that, oh yeah, something else I got wrote down for Mario's 40th anniversary that I kind of forgot to talk about. They could bring back Super Mario 35, only now it's called Super Mario 40, and so it's 40 people playing together. Maybe we actually make it permanent this time instead of delisting it after like 6 months or whatever. They could also do some kind of new, online Royale type game, like they got Tetris 99. They could do a Dr. Mario 99. I think that could be really fun. I'd like to see that. That's another one of those things that I think would be another good like Switch 1 game, because a lot of consoles do have like a Dr. Mario game late in the life cycle. So Dr. Mario 99, I could see that. Beyond that, we talked about Rhythm Heaven and Tomodachi. We could get some more information on those. Another game, I keep forgetting this game exists, and I think a lot of other people do too, because it wasn't announced in a Nintendo Direct. I don't hear anybody talk about it. It wasn't announced in a Nintendo Direct. They just put out a trailer for it one day and haven't talked about it since. We don't know a release window, when it's coming out. Is it this year? Is it next year? But Splatoon Raiders. I think we might see more of that in this presentation, where they actually explain what the heck this game is. All we really know, for the most part, is that it's a single-player campaign. It's sort of a spin-off of Splatoon. But if it's going to be like a full $70 game, it better have a substantial amount of whoops, better have a substantial amount of content, because it's not going to have that replayability of being like an online co-op competitive shooting game where you can play hundreds and hundreds of hours. So I hope there's like a lot of levels, or ideally I think it would be really cool if it was like an open world sort of thing, but I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. I didn't say it earlier when we were talking about the possibility of a new 3D Mario, but I really want that to be open world as well. I'd love to get a Galaxy 3 at some point, but first I think I'd like to have like an open world Breath of the Wild type of Mario game, kind of an expansion of like what Bowser's Fury was. I'm hoping that's what's next for 3D Mario. Um, but um, but yeah, I'm just looking down at this list of what all I got. Um, I mentioned a possible Switch 2 edition of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, and I talked about how it could have like a Paper Luigi side story. Something else I wrote down they could add like maybe some new badges or a new like parlor game at like the like Don Pianta's Casino. Or just another little thing I think could be kind of cool. They could have like a harder version of the Pit of 100 Trials, like 100 more, even more difficult trials with like a new boss at the end. That could be a pretty cool thing that they could add. And then when I put down on here Pikmin 4 Switch 2 Edition, I'd also wrote down that if they do that, they could also put the soundtrack on Nintendo Music to coincide with the release of that. Not a huge thing, but just something else I'd put down. Um, the Mario movie sequel that's going to be coming out, I'll be honest, I don't think a Nintendo Direct is the right place to show like a trailer or anything for it. I think they might do their own separate presentation. Um, Talked about a new Wario Land. So there's been rumors for like years now about remake of Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War. I'm not a Fire Emblem guy myself. I'm not really that into like real-time strategy games like that where it's like on a grid and stuff. So I don't really have much of anything to say about it. Could we see it here? Maybe. This could be one of those games that's also a Switch 1 game and not necessarily Switch 2. I don't know. But yeah, they tend to make a lot of Fire Emblem games, so I could see that happening. Um, New Animal Crossing is something else I put down. Before the like going into the start of this year, I would have said that I think a new Animal Crossing game in the first year of the Switch 2's life was almost a guarantee, because the Animal Crossing New Horizons sold so well. It was like I think over like 30 million units, maybe even more than that. It was like one of the best selling games on the whole console, except for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Just unprecedented success. But it kind of threw a wrench in it where they announced earlier this year the Tomodachi Life game. Because both games, like they're very different in terms of gameplay, but they are both life sims, where you have your characters in this town and you kind of customize it and you see how the characters interact. And you change your outfit, you buy clothes, you customize the way that your apartment looks and stuff. So they're in a very similar genre. So that's got me thinking maybe we won't see Animal Crossing this year, because that would kind of be Animal Crossing and Tomodachi kind of competing with each other a little bit. I don't know. Then again, I feel like um, Animal Crossing New Leaf on 3DS and then Tomodachi Life released fairly close together within like a year of each other. So maybe they will. I don't know. It makes sense to get out an Animal Crossing sooner rather than later for Switch 2. Or maybe they're going to do a Switch 2 edition and just like update New Horizons. But I feel like they'd be leaving a lot of money on the table. Whereas, at this point, like just make a new game, $70 or 80, God forbid, and make everybody buy it again. But so I don't know. So I'm kind of torn on that one. But I'm kind of feeling that it's not going to happen though, since we are getting the new Tomodachi. I think maybe we won't see it until 2027 at the earliest. Beyond that, Let's see. I'm looking at the list. I got a lot of things down here that not all of it's necessarily like super likely. I think we are getting close to running out of first party games. This might be the last one that I have on the list, I think, actually. And that is, I could see them closing it. I could see them ending with the announcement of a new, ambitious, open exploration Star Fox game. Obviously, the last Star Fox game didn't do super well. Star Fox Zero wasn't very well received. It's really hard to believe, but that was like 10 years ago at this point. That was like 2015, I think, when that game came out, which is crazy. But I think, kind of like Donkey Kong, they've had this big push to revitalize it. I think they maybe want to do the same thing with Star Fox. It's another one of Miyamoto's babies, like Pikmin, that I feel like F Zero is a franchise that Miyamoto just doesn't care about for whatever reason. But I think he does care about the rest of his babies, Mario and Zelda and Pikmin, and I think also Star Fox. Also, I think Star Fox would be a great candidate to get a movie adaptation someday. Will we? I don't know. Um, but I think that's a really interesting and unique characters and setting. Animals in space. I just think that's cool. Not aliens. It's just talking animals in space. I think that's fun. Um, and so I would absolutely watch an animated movie with those characters. But I've never been that into the games because to me it just feels so antiquated. Just these on rails linear shooters where you're just kind of going for a high score. Typically, the games don't have a lot of content. You can beat them in like 2 hours. It's just about playing them again and again to try to like see different routes and try to get as high of a score as possible. But like, I just don't care about that sort of arcade kind of gameplay. But if they came out with a new Star Fox that kind of draws inspiration from like that Starlink Battle for Atlas game, which had on the Switch version you could play as Fox and friends, or also what is it? What's the name of that game? Was it like Interstellar, whatever that game was that it kind of wasn't received super well, but that people were hyped up for it. And then it came out and it was kind of whatever. But that Bethesda game that came out on Xbox Series X, that was like an open world outer space thing. But I think they could glean some inspiration from that, if not maybe do all the missteps that game had, and then also stuff like what is it, No Man's Sky or like Outer Wilds or whatever, where you fly around and you land on these different planets, and maybe you can like step out of your vehicle and explore on foot, and gather materials and stuff, and fly around in uncharted places, and then you can just seamlessly fly up into the atmosphere and leave the planet and fly to another planet and explore that. I think there's a lot of potential for an open world Star Fox game like that. And then like when you're up in space, you can still have like the dogfights and stuff like that, kind of the familiar Star Fox gameplay. But just with like a whole actual world to freely explore at your leisure, I think would be a lot of fun. I think that would really get me into Star Fox. Because again, that franchise has never really done much for me before. But I think it needs a shakeup. I think they need to do something new with it and drastic and different. So yeah, that's pretty much it for my first party predictions for Switch 2. So going into some third parties, because we talked about third parties with Switch 1, but for Switch 2, again, Capcom has been a very strong supporter, so they could bring out, they brought over Street Fighter 6 and stuff. I could see them. It's kind of surprising in the April presentation they didn't announce a Resident Evil game coming to Switch 2, because that's obviously a big series. They could do the remakes of 2, 3, and 4. Then they could do native ports of 7 and 8, because those only had like I think cloud versions in Japan. But they could actually have them properly running on the console now. I don't know what order they would release all of those games in, but I think most of them will come to Switch 2 eventually, because I mean, like, they put a bunch of Resident Evil games on the Switch 1 over the course of several years, that were announced in a bunch of different directs and stuff. So I think something will happen here in terms of the order. Probably the best one to start with might be the remake of Resident Evil 4 because that wasn't that long ago when that came out, so it would be like a relatively newish game. So they could put that out, and because that game already Nintendo fans kind of have an affinity for that one because it was originally a GameCube exclusive, and Leon Kennedy. I don't play any of the Resident Evil games, but Leon Kennedy is the only protagonist that I actually know by name. So I think that's kind of a testament to the popularity of RE4. So I think that would be a good place to start with. I think they're working on like a new Resident Evil game that's coming out, but I don't know what the release date is on that. Maybe the Switch 2 version of that one won't be till sometime down the line. But I think something Resident Evil would be really cool to see here. Maybe they announce multiple ones. Maybe they announce 2, 3, and 4 remake are all coming, and 7 and 8. I don't know. It's a lot to announce in one presentation. But something Resident Evil, and also Capcom, I think, could announce something Monster Hunter. They got Monster Hunter Wilds that came out not too long ago. Get out a Switch 2 edition of that. Also, Monster Hunter World, that game never came to Switch, so maybe, that game's kind of older at this point, but they could maybe port that over. Like a deluxe edition that has like the DLC. I forget what it was called, but I think there was like a snow DLC expansion. They could also do, outside of Capcom, going back to Square Enix, they could announce actual native ports of Kingdom Hearts, the whole Kingdom Hearts series. Because, we got like a collection of all the Kingdom Hearts games, 1, 2, and Dream Drop Distance and 365 divided by 7, whatever nonsense. And 3, they could put all those games on Switch 2, but it's not just the crappy cloud versions like we had on Switch 1, but actually like, native downloads, and would also be nice to have it on cartridge physical, but it would probably just be a game key card to be, if we're being honest, but at least to have a digital version that works on Switch 2 hardware without, without it being a crappy, laggy online sort of thing, I think would be really great to see. Baldur's Gate 3, that's another one of those big ones that wasn't in the April presentation, but, was probably coming, like how we're getting Elden Ring and stuff. They're supposed to be coming out with a Metal Gear Solid collection, like Volume 2, because I know Volume 1 came out on the Switch. I don't know what games are going to be in the second volume, but if it's like Metal Gear Solid like 5, I don't know if that would run on the Switch 1, but I think Switch 2 shouldn't have a problem. Or I think, didn't they also have that? I don't know if it's out yet. Did it already come? I think it did come out recently, that remake of, was it Twin Snakes? Which I think was on like the GameCube back in the day, if I'm not mistaken. So that'd be a good one for Konami to bring that over to Switch 2. This one might be a Switch 1 thing, but Konami could also... I actually didn't realize until recently, like I always hear people talk about Castlevania Symphony of the Night as being like the best Castlevania game. Apparently that's not on modern consoles. It's not on like the Switch or PS5 or anything. So maybe Konami announces a port or maybe a remake of that game or something. But I think that could run on the Switch 1 just fine. And then I'd be curious, now that they've got Street Fighter 6 on Switch too, would they go back and do like Street Fighter 5? Because like that never came to Switch. Could it not run on a base Switch? I don't know. And then Final Fantasy 7 Remake, they already announced is coming, but they could also do like 14 and 15, and isn't there a 16 now? Maybe, I don't know. I don't really play Final Fantasy either. But they could bring all that over. So yeah, I think that's kind of the majority of like the somewhat realistic predictions. Something else I'd really like to see. So there's this collection called Atari 50. That's got a bunch of Atari games, and it's got like video, like interviews and stuff with people who made them and stuff. I never picked it up, But I saw recently they had just recently announced that it's going to be getting Namco DLC. So it's going to be like Atari versions of like the old like Atari Pac-Man and stuff, which was kind of infamous for being bad. But I think that's still a really cool novelty. And then like interviews and stuff, and presumably other Namco games that I guess arcade games that got Atari ports. Like I don't know if there was one for like Galaga and stuff like that or not, or like Dig Dug or whatever. Um, but that's got me curious. I think that's really neat. So something I would love to see because I didn't really grow up with like an Atari or anything. That was well before my time. But on PS1, I had a game called Activision Classics, which had like 30 uh, Activision Atari games on it. None of which are available in Atari 50. So I would love to see another DLC now that they've done the Namco one, do an Activision DLC that's like all of those old Atari games. There was, or all the old, yeah, Activision Atari games. Like there was Plaque Attack was the name of one that I remember was really fun, where it's like a shooter, kind of like Galaga, but you're a toothpaste dispenser and you're shooting like food and trying to keep it from like landing on the teeth and giving them cavities. That was a fun one. There was Pitfall, probably the most famous Atari 2600 game. Um, there was quite a few in that collection. Some were good, some were not as good, but I have a lot of nostalgia for that. And so I would really love to see that come to modern platforms, to have it on Switch, be able to play those old games on the go. Kaboom, that was one that was a lot of fun. There was this one where you were like a police officer running through a mall and you were trying to catch this like robber guy that I remember being kind of fun. There was like a boxing one and a tennis one. They kind of sucked. There was one that was sort of, it was like a two-player versus version, almost like a Frogger, but it was like you were these like ducks or something, but it was basically like a Frogger clone. Um, but yeah, some of them were pretty fun. And so yeah, again, I'd love to have that on a modern system, some way to play those. Um, but but yeah, I think beyond that, it's just kind of like pie in the sky stuff that everything else I've said, I think at least has somewhat of a chance, whether it happens or not. Oh yeah, one other thing I put on here, going back to Ubisoft, they'd announced years ago that Prince of Persia: Sands of Time remake, and then it kind of went through development heck for a long time. And then I don't know if they had to like kind of like redo it because like what they showed early on didn't really look all that impressive, and so then I think they maybe went back and reevaluated. Maybe now's the time we see that. I don't know. Like that's not been canceled yet, has it? Because I know Ubisoft's canceled a lot of games. But I could see that coming to Switch 2. Maybe it's not able to run on Switch 1. But yeah, Prince of Persia: Sands of Time remake. I got that down as a possibility. But otherwise, yeah, the rest of these are pretty like unlikely. Like Spyro 4, I wrote down I'd love to see it, but that would get announced probably in an Xbox show in like June around the typical E3 time. That probably wouldn't be a Nintendo Direct announcement. Um, I also put down, I'd love to see, this would also probably be in a Microsoft thing, I'd love to see ports of Crash Twinsanity and Wrath of Cortex, because I'm a big Crash Bandicoot guy, but that's probably not going to happen. Well, this could happen. Psychonauts. Psychonauts 2, I don't think there's any way that game could run on Switch 1 without a lot of compromise. Microsoft, I think, kind of like helped fund that game, the second one, but Psychonauts 2, I mean, like it's playable on PS5. That's how I played it. Really great game. I loved it. I'd love to see that come over to Switch. I think it would be right at home because it's a 3D platformer. Really good story. One of the best stories of any 3D platformer I've ever played, too. And then the first Psychonauts game, that could probably run on a Switch 1 if they were to port it. The second game, I don't think could, but I'd love to see that, the two Psychonauts games. I put down, we know that they're working on a new like 3D Shovel Knight game, but we've not seen anything of it. They just kind of teased it, but that's been a pretty good while. Maybe we're getting close to time to show the 3D Shovel Knight. I don't know. That might be one of those things that would be in an indie world, or maybe Yacht Club Games does their own presentation. That might not be something in a Nintendo Direct. So I don't think it's very likely, but I put it down. Um, I'm so ready for a sequel to A Hat in Time. That's another one that I don't think is going to be here at all. I don't even know if Gears for Breakfast, the indie team behind it, is even working on a new Hat in Time game, but I love the first one so much. I really want to see a second one. And the last ridiculous pie in the sky thing on this list is I got down possible PlayStation ports because, we know, I guess the door is pretty wide open now with Sony putting, uh, everybody's golf on Switch. That's a Sony property. Um, um, Patapon. I started to say Panel de Pon, but no, Patapon, which was a PSP thing, and then also the Lego Horizons game with like Aloy. That's on Switch now, which is kind of crazy to think about. So if then they also had like the MLB like baseball games or whatever before that was kind of the first big undertaking, but that was kind of a special case because the MLB was going to partner with somebody else unless Sony went multi-platform with it. But the other games they didn't have to, but they chose to anyway. Um, so that's exciting potentially. Like Ape Escape would be perfect on Switch. It would be right at home. That would be amazing if they put the Ape Escape games. Growing up, I loved Jack and Daxter, the first one in particular. The other ones are kind of whatever, but Jack and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy, having that on Switch would be amazing. Um, Also, the Sly Cooper series. And these are all games that would be so at home on a Nintendo system because they're all 3D platformers. We eat that stuff up like candy in the Nintendo ecosystem. So just there'd be so much money on the table. They would be like at the top of the eShop bestsellers. Oh my gosh, that would be so exciting. Um, they could also do other stuff like I don't know how crazy they would get with it because they want to still have exclusives, but enough time has passed now that maybe they don't bring Spider-Man 2 over to the Switch, but they could put like the 2018 Spider-Man game on Switch 2. That would sell extremely well. Or like the Uncharted series, Last of Us, God of War. Again, they might not go into those, but the ones I mentioned before, the more like cartoony, platformy, family-friendly games, again, that would just really fit in with the Nintendo ecosystem. Uh, would they do it? I don't know, but I would love to see that happen. One last thing I put on here. This might be kind of a wild card, um, but I'm going to predict that a game that could come to the Switch 2, just complete wild card. If I get this right, then I think I deserve a lot of credit for this. Um, League of Legends. So League of Legends is a really really popular MMO game. I don't know. It's not a game that I follow. It's not a game I really care that much about. But I was just thinking, what would be a good third party game that would be a really big get for Nintendo? Um, and one of the biggest things I could think of was League of Legends because it's got a very big Asian market. I know it's really big in China because I was friends with some international students from China back when I was in college, and they were very familiar with it, despite the fact that China, up until more recently, had a lot of restrictions on video games that you could play and stuff. But that was one that really took off in China, and I think in the Philippines and just other places in Asia, maybe Korea, where League of Legends is huge. So that's a massive market, very massive Eastern market, even if it's maybe not so much so in the West. I don't know. And I looked it up, and League of Legends doesn't have a console port as far as I could tell. It's not on PlayStation. It's not on Xbox. Because I guess, it's a PC game, so it's kind of, made with that interface in mind. But with the Switch 2 having mouse controls and everything, I don't know. I feel like that could be a really, really good fit for something like that. So that's kind of a wild card, kind of a crazy one. Um, you know what? We'll add one more to this list. Just thinking about really popular games that are on PC. I don't know anything about it really, other than it's an online competitive shooter. But I hear a lot of people talk about Team Fortress 2, and I know that's kind of an old game, but like I feel like I always hear stuff about it. Was that like heavy weapons guy or whatever? I know a bunch of memes about it, but I've never played it or anything. But I think that would also be another really big get. So going out on a limb with those two. I don't care about either of them really. League of Legends, Team Fortress, whatever. But I could see them being big deals, and I could see maybe Nintendo getting that done. I don't know. Um, but but yeah, otherwise, I think that's pretty much it. I might have put some other Switch Online games. Yeah, like we still don't have Wario Land 1 and 2. Where the heck are they at? That's kind of a crazy omission. Um, they brought over a whole bunch of Donkey Kong games like in the past year, like all the Donkey Kong Land games and stuff, DK94. They've not brought over Donkey Kong King of Swing yet on the Game Boy Advance. So I'd kind of like to see us get that before long because I never actually played that game, but I did own the sequel and beat it as a kid, DK Jungle Climber on the DS. So I think it would be just a really neat novelty, if nothing else, to experience the first one. Um, but but yeah, I think it's otherwise it's pretty much everything that I've got down on this list. I'm looking at the list. For some reason, I wrote down Banjo Kazooie remake. There's like a 0% chance of that happening. I don't even know why I put that on this list. Um, but but yeah, I think that's. I think we might get it one of these days, though. Phil Spencer did kind of tease, like, Banjo fans, we hear you or whatever. But that would be announced, I think, at a Microsoft presentation. And even though they have really good relationship with Nintendo right now, I don't see them putting that in a Nintendo show, like revealing it, announcing it for the first time. And that'd probably be another one of those things that'd probably be around E3 season in like June time, in like a June Microsoft presentation or something. But but yeah, I guess that's pretty much a wrap. So thank you so very much for listening to me ramble on and on about what could potentially be in this presentation. Um, I'm not going to predict the day it's on, whether it's the 11th or 12th. Maybe 12th, just because, like, so it doesn't line up with like 9/11. But I don't know. I mean, it's been like 25 years or something like that since then. So time does move on. Not to sound cold and callous, but like, I mean, if people are getting upset about them, having it on that day in 2025, I think that's a little crazy. Um, but I don't know. I think the 12th might be just a better day. It just sounds more like a direct day, September 12th. I don't know. How long will it be? Maybe 40 minutes. I think the last one was what? No, the last one might have been like an hour that's when they were kind of going over all the features and stuff for the Switch 2 and the camera and everything. Speaking of that camera, if they do announce a new Star Fox game, like I mentioned, like an ambitious open world Star Fox game, they could still have like a versus mode with like online that's like the cockpit fights, like in Star Fox 64. And in Star Fox, almost said something else there. Star Fox 64 3D on the 3DS. The 3DS had a built-in camera, so they had, like, when you fly around, doing the dog fights, you could see like the person's like face, like a little video feed of their face. So I could see them bringing that back for like an online cockpit mode with the Switch 2 camera, kind of like in Mario Kart or Mario Party Jamboree, where you can just see a picture of their face as you're flying around shooting each other. That just seems like a thing that Nintendo would do. But yeah, I think that's everything. So thank you all so very much for listening to me ramble. Probably most of this stuff won't be in the presentation, but hopefully I may be right about one or two things. I don't know. It's kind of hard to predict because that last presentation really threw me for a loop. I'd love to be predicting a Switch 2 edition of Smash Brothers with new characters, with like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and Rayman coming to it, or a Switch 2 HD remake of Kid Icarus Uprising, but Sakurai's working on a new Kirby Air Ride game, so neither of those are probably happening at this time, unless Sakurai's just multitasking on two different projects at once, which I wouldn't put it past him, considering he made Smash Brothers for Wii U and 3DS at the same time. Um, but I want it so bad though. I want a Kid Icarus Uprising remake, and he did say a couple years ago that he would like to see it ported to consoles someday. And there was that whole thing where uh, Namco was hiring for a some kind of collaborative project with Nintendo that was like a remake of an action game or something. Um, so I don't know what that was. Maybe we still will get a Kid Icarus Uprising remake sooner rather than later. Again, I'm not expecting it, but it'd be pretty exciting. But yeah, I think that's about it. So gonna wrap up this video. Thank you all so very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. But yeah, let me know again down in the comments what games that you hope to see in the presentation, what games you realistically think will be in the presentation, um, and yeah. All right. Well, I was just thinking if I wanted to talk, but I've been rambling so much at this point. But just like stuff I didn't talk about, but that could be in the presentation, like there'll probably be sizzle, a little sizzle reel that'll probably show some Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D and some Sonic Racing Cross World. I don't think we'll get anything new on those games. I don't think we'll get anything new about Pac-Man World 2 Repack because like it's about to come out. Katamari, maybe a little sizzle reel, but I don't think there'll be anything new on that. Yeah, I think I'm done talking now. Okay, bye.